Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. May I start my very brief response submissions by thanking all the core participants and their advocates for their helpful, succinct and thought-provoking submissions. There is much for the inquiry and for you, Mr. Chairman, to take away and consider carefully. I only want to cover three things in my wrap-up, as it were. First, Mr. Mansfield's formal application for a panel of decision-makers to sit as decision-makers with you. Second, experts, and just to say something very briefly about that. And thirdly, something even more brief about the TMO disclosure of the housing files. So far as the first of those is concerned, Mr. Mansfield's application for a panel, our basic position is this. We recognise absolutely that unless the work of our inquiry is collaborative, inclusive and empowering of those who were the victims of the fire at Grenfell Tower, our work will be in vain. We completely agree with the sentiments expressed by Mr. Mansfield and others about public support for and confidence in the work of the inquiry. It is for that reason, among others, that the residents, the survivors and the bereaved have been given automatic core participant status. That has actually brought them right into the heart of the inquiry. They will get access to the disclosed documents. They will get to make submissions. They will get to give evidence. They will get to pose specific questions and see that justice is done at very close quarters. Core participant status brings very significant advantages. It ensures balance, it ensures thoroughness, and it ensures openness. As I set out yesterday, Mr. Chairman, we do intend to involve the survivors, the residents and the bereaved who are core participants in the process and processes of this inquiry into their tragedy as much as we can, consistently with our duty to control and operate a ruthlessly independent and effective investigation. However, the question of the composition of the panel does give rise to rather different considerations. We would suggest, very briefly, that it is properly a matter for the Prime Minister, as the sponsoring minister, to decide under the Act whether she wishes to appoint other members to sit as decision makers with you on a panel. We would suggest, respectfully, that it would be wrong for you to express any view either way before she has made that decision, since that might be seen as influencing her decision on that matter. And you need no reminding, but I'll remind you anyway, Mr. Chairman, you must remain wholly independent of government in this inquiry. If she decides not to ask you, then the question of your consent under the Act does not arise. If she does ask you, then you must, and you will, approach the question of whether to consent with an entirely open mind. So far as the question of experts is concerned, my second wrap-up topic, there is one important point of clarification on expert evidence that I may need to make. Some of the submissions that you heard yesterday from certain of the core participant advocates, including Mr. Steen, suggested that the inquiry had accepted that bereaved residents and survivors should be allowed to engage their own experts and their own expert advisors. I quote from the transcript at page 121. What, in fact, I said in my oral submissions to you yesterday was that the inquiry team was sympathetic to the need to allow more time, for all CPs to digest the inquiry experts' reports and to make any applications to call their own expert evidence than had been indicated in our provisional programme. Beyond that, in terms of whether permission will be granted for any particular core participant to call their own expert evidence, our position remains entirely unchanged from my statement dated the 15th of November, namely that the guiding principle will be that it is for the inquiry to investigate. Any core participant who wishes to call an expert on any particular topic will have to make out an exceptional case as to why they should be permitted to do so. I reiterated that yesterday. Any such application will need to explain why, in the context of an inquisitorial procedure such as this, the core participant should be permitted to call expert evidence, and why the work cannot be undertaken by the inquiry experts or, for example, by putting questions to them. All of that said, we do see force in ensuring as far as we can that there is equality of arms between the core participant organisations, whether between themselves or not, and individual core participants, so far as concerns the assessment of the need to call an expert or the need to apply to do so. And there is, of course, a threshold and preliminary set of work that may need to be done in order fairly to allow core participants to arrive at that position. We would suggest, Mr. Chairman, that we, the inquiry team, give that further consideration. Thirdly and finally, so far as the TMO's disclosure of the relevant housing files is concerned, the position is that the memory stick provided by the TMO on the 28th of November was, I'm afraid, very difficult to access and manage. The inquiry team met the TMO's solicitors on the 5th of December and informed them of the problems such as corrupted documents, duplication, unreadability and other matters of that nature. We wrote to them on the 8th of December asking for hard copies by the 12th of January. Ms Jarrett has very helpfully told us that those will be produced by Christmas, and so this particular problem has, I think, now been resolved, and I'm glad to be able to tell you of that, and we look forward to the TMO's continuing good offices and assistance in that matter as in all others. Mr. Chairman, I have nothing else to add by way of reply. I'm grateful to for your attention.
Thank you very much, Mr. Millett. Well.